we're going to follow the arc of the process of this Nazir as he goes from beginning to end. And at the end, he has to bring sacrifices to the temple. And the Mishnah is going to talk about what he does, but the Mishnah knows the verses, it knows the psukim. So before we jump into the Mishnah, which is the 7th Mishnah of the 6th chapter, before we jump into the Mishnah, we need to look at the psukim, we need to look at the verses and just remind ourselves. We're in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 6, verse 13, the Parsha of Nazir, and it begins, Vezot Torah HaNazir. This is the law of the Nazir. Beyond Malot Yemei Nizro, when he finishes the days, when the days of his Nazirut are finished off. Yavi Oto El Petach Ohel Moed. He brings it to the door of the Ohel Moed. And we're not quite sure actually what it is, but the Torah then specifies there are three animal offerings. There's a male lamb for an olah, and there's a female lamb for a chatat, and there's a ram for a shlamim, for a peace offering or a whole offering. And then there's bread, and the Kohen brings them and offers them up. And then at that point, once they're all offered up, the Nazir shaves his head at the door of the Ohel Moed, and the priest is going to take the hair that he's shaved off. And the text says, Venatan et kapen. Hang on a second. Let me just find the text. Hang on just a sec. The Nazir is going to shave at the door of the tent of the Ohel Moed, and the priest Velakach et Sa'ar Rosh Nizro, and the priest is going to take the hair from his head, Venatan al ha'esh asher tachat deva hashlamim. The priest is going to put the hair on the fire, which is below the sacrifice of the shlamim, the whole offering. So the hair is going to be burned on the altar underneath the sacrifice, underneath the pot, which is holding the sacrifice. So just like the pot is holding the sacrifice, let's just hold that image in our heads for a sec. And now let's jump into the Mishnah. Tiglachet hata'ara keitzad. Shaving in purity, how was it done? The previous Mishnah talked about shaving for someone who'd come into contact with a dead body. On the 3rd and the 7th day, he gets sprinkled with the water, and then at the end, he has to shave. So there is a shaving after coming into contact with a dead body, but this is the shaving in purity at the end of the term of the Nazir. And the Mishnah explains, repeats the text. Hayam maybe shalosh peimot. So he'd bring the 3 animals. Chatat ve'olah shlamim, sin offering, a burnt offering, a whole offering. Ve'shochet et hashlamim umegaleach aleihem. And he's going to slaughter the whole offering and shave on them, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda is emphasizing the fact that in the text, the shaving is somehow associated with the whole offering, and it's burnt underneath. It is burnt on the fire underneath the whole offering. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Lo haya magalech ela al hachatat. Rabbi Elazar says he only shaves after the sin offering. She'achatat kodemet b'chol makom, because the sin offering always comes first. Rabbi Elazar has got another verse in his mind, and this is about the person that can't afford to bring a sin offering, and this is brought in at the beginning of Vayikra, and the text there says that someone who can't afford a sin offering just brings 2 animals, 2 doves or 2 pigeons. One for a sin offering and one for a burnt offering. And the text there says, V'hevi otom el kohen v'hikriv et asher lachatat rishona. he's going to bring these two birds, and the priest will offer the one for the sin offering first. The sin offering gets offered first in the case of the two turtle doves. That's what Rabbi Elazar is thinking about when he says, Rabbi Elazar says, the sin offering always comes first. And the halacha, the Rambam rules that the halacha does not go according to Rabbi Elazar, because the text is clear that the hair belongs to the shlamim, the peace offering, and the Mishnah concludes ve'im gilach al achat mi shloshtam yatsa. Actually, if he shaves on any one of the three, he's actually fulfilled his obligation. What if we don't know which is which? Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer hevi shalosh be'emot velo peresh. So Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, look, what if he brings three animals and he doesn't actually say which is which? And generally, when we bring an offering, we need to specify it so that there is a connection between thought and action. There's a connection between thought and action. We have to dedicate the animal. So what if he doesn't dedicate the animal? Well, of course, in this case, the verses are clear about the male, the female lamb, the ram. So actually, it's possible to deduce just by looking at the animals which is which. And the Mishnah then explains this. So he doesn't specify it. So the one suitable for a sin offering is sacrificed as a sin offering, i.e., the Kohanim can figure out which is which. The one that's suitable for a burnt offering is sacrificed as a burnt offering. La shlamim tikarev la shlamim, and the one for a whole offering is sacrificed as a whole offering. So the Kohanim can figure out what is what. Hayan notel rosh nizro. He then takes the hair of his Nazir head, u'mushaleh tachat hadur, and he throws it under this thing which Kaufman says is called the dur. We're not quite sure what a dur is. Most printed texts actually say dud. So most printed texts have a daled instead of a resh. And if you look in Jastrow will say to you that a dud is a big pot. It's a cauldron. The shlamim are being cooked in this pot. It's clearly, and Jastrow, by the way, doesn't mention that you can spell dur. So I don't understand why Kaufman says dur instead of dud, but Kaufman is clearly saying dur. And I don't know, I've looked for dur, and I cannot translate dur in any way except as meaning pot. It says dur. Ve'im gilach ba'medina, if he shaved in the province, that's if he shaved in Jerusalem. When we talk about Ba'medina, at least according to the Rambam, we're talking about Jerusalem here. If he shaved in the city, hayam shaleh tachat hadur. If he shaved in Jerusalem, then he'd throw it under the door. B'mei dvarim amorim, what are we talking about here? B'tiglachat hatara. We're talking about the shaving in purity. That's how our Mishnah began, but the previous Mishnah began. We're talking about shaving in purity. The shaving that you do when you've had your sprinkling after coming into contact with a dead body on the third and the seventh day, that's different. And the Mishnah makes this clear. With regard to shaving for uncleanness, he doesn't throw it under the door. Interestingly, this is not a scribal error in Kaufman, by the way, because the word door comes up again and again and again. It's always spelled with a resh, spelled with a daled in most printed texts. And by the way, I had a quick look at the Yerushalmi. The Talmud of Yerushalmi quotes it with a daled. So I can't explain the resh, but it is there right the way through. Rabbi Meir says, "Kol mushalchim tachat hadud." Rabbi Meir says they all throw it under the cauldron. Hutz min ha-tameh sheba medina bilvad. Rabbi Meir says, actually, the halacha doesn't go according to Rabbi Meir, but Rabbi Meir says they all throw it under the cauldron, except the unclean one who's shaving in the city of Jerusalem.